In episode 6, the FBI comes into the apartment, and along with Chelsea, they start looking into the disappearance of Maddie. Now, while Monks could really be a detriment in this situation and rub it in Chelsea's face, he doesn't. He tries to be the ultimate partner, helping her figure out exactly what happened to the vice president's daughter. With Monk's experience, it's a good thing that he's willing to be Chelsea's second in command because he knows that they don't have a lot of time. They start looking around the apartment for some clues, and what they find are drawings of Maddie. And that's when Chelsea gets really down on herself because she realizes that this teacher had been grooming Maddie for quite some time and Chelsea never picked up on it. She starts beating herself up over this, and Monks tries to make her feel better, but Chelsea isn't in the mood for a pep talk. She kind of snaps at Monks a little bit. Monks says to her, hey, take some advice. Don't bottle this stuff up. It's best to actually open up to your partner. Trust me, I know from experience. Chelsea, however, isn't willing to open up to Monks quite yet. They keep looking for clues, and they do find some. It's drawings of another person, and there's a lot of them. One drawing in particular has this guy without a shirt on and a very recognizable snake tattoo. But the tattoo isn't what gets Chelsea's eye. It's the symbol behind him. She recognizes it. Something in Maddie's room. She's not quite sure what, but she does want to go investigate it. They go to leave this apartment to head back to Maddie's dorm to try to find some hint of what that symbol does mean, but Ben Almora shows up and tries to put the kibosh on it. He wants to let Chelsea go from the investigation. Ben heaps all the blame on Chelsea because, after all, she was the one in charge of the Secret Service detail, the detail that let Maddie Redfield escape, but that ultimately led to her kidnapping. So it's understandable of why he puts the blame on her. But when he tries to put Monks in charge, Monks fights him on it. And he says, no, Ben, you're not going to do that. If we want to find Maddie, which is the ultimate goal, we need Chelsea. Chelsea knows Maddie better than anybody. So if you want any hope of finding the vice president's daughter, you'll keep her on this detail. Almora reluctantly agrees to Monks, but does tell him, she can stay, but you're in charge. And you would think that Monks coming to Chelsea's defense would actually be a good thing, but no, she doesn't take it like that at all. She gets pissed off. And when she gets to Maddie's dorm room, she can't keep it in anymore. She feels like, from the conversation that she just heard between Ben, herself, and Monks, that it's pretty clear Ben and Monks have been talking about Chelsea and been talking about what kind of job she's done. And she feels like she hasn't been portrayed correctly, that she's not good at her job because she's close to Maddie. Because of this, she gives Monks a lot of attitude, but Monks realizes in this situation that Chelsea isn't actually mad at him. She's mad at the situation. She's stressed out and she puts a lot of blame on herself. So while she might be giving him a lot of attitude, he doesn't really fight her on it. He tries once again to give her a pep talk, telling her that you can't protect a protectee from themselves. This time, his little pep talk does work. She ultimately apologizes reluctantly and admits that she's not mad at him, she's just mad at the situation, and then they're able to get back on track with looking for this symbol. Through talking it out, she remembers that Maddie keeps a secret box hidden in the ceiling, and it's stuff that she doesn't want anyone to find out about. So if Maddie didn't want Chelsea, someone she's close with, to find out something, she would likely keep it in that box. Chelsea goes, she locates the box, and sure enough, she finds a pamphlet for an environmentalist group called New Leaf. Maddie did talk to Chelsea briefly about New Leaf, about how some boy invited her to one of their meetings, but she wasn't planning on going. Guess it was important enough, though, to keep the pamphlet. When they turn to the back of the pamphlet, there's a note written that says, I really hope to see you there, -PB. And that's from the professor. Monks does a quick Instagram search and finds out that the professor was the head of the DC chapter of New Leaf. And New Leaf does have some credibility. They recently staged a sit-in at a refinery for months and it worked. So this group has been gaining traction all over the country. But on that same Instagram page, it's another picture that catches Chelsea's eye. All the way in the background, you see a guy without a shirt who's sporting a very noticeable snake tattoo on his ribcage. They feel like if they find this guy with the snake tattoo, they might be able to locate Maddie. And at the same moment that they're looking for clues, the vice president is being informed about Maddie's abduction. At first, he thinks it's nothing more than her running off, but then he legitimately gets concerned when he finds out that she was abducted and her teacher was killed. You can tell by his reaction that it is genuine. He had no idea this was going to happen. Now, while people in the White House are frantically looking for Maddie Redfield, somewhere in D.C., Peter and Rose are headed back to the White House, but they're actually not going there. Peter tells Rose that the vice president didn't have authorization to pull her Secret Service detail that day in the hotel, which means that somebody must be working with him. And until they find out who that person is, it doesn't make much sense to walk into the White House together. They have no line of exit. So what Peter's going to do is he's going to drive Rose to his friend's place where he knows that she'll be safe. He'll then go to the White House, debrief Diane on everything they found, and get a safe transfer for Rose over to the White House. The place where Peter decides to take Rose is his buddy Francisco's apartment. Francisco is the state trooper who helped out Peter earlier. They go way back from Quantico. Peter is one of Francisco's best friends. He knows that Francisco will protect Rose at all costs, and she'll be safe there. Before Peter heads off, he does remind Rose about their meetup spot, the fishing pier. This is just in case anything were to go awry. But unbeknownst to Peter, they were being followed. The two assassins were putting that tracker to use. And Peter did have an inkling that somebody was behind them, but when he went through a red light and no one sped up, he just assumed that he was being paranoid. When in reality, they didn't speed up because they knew exactly where Peter was going. Now, when Peter headed to the White House, he didn't take that vehicle. So those two assassins are simply parked outside of Francisco's apartment waiting for someone to come out. And they don't see Peter. So Peter unassumingly heads off to go meet with Diane, and as soon as he gets to the White House, he knows that something's going on because everyone's kind of running around and they seem hyper-focused on one thing. When he eventually meets with Diane, he asks her, "What's going on around here?" And she tells him that he doesn't have to worry about it, but just crap seems to be hitting the fan at the moment. What she's really focused on is the fact that Peter didn't bring Rose. He's once again not following orders, and she gets pretty pissed off. And Peter says, "Once I tell you what we found, you'll understand why I did what I did. Rose is just with a buddy at the moment. But don't worry, her and the driver are safe." Peter then gets into what they found. The fact that the bombing was actually disguised as an assassination attempt, and whoever that attempt was against was the person who Chelsea was to protect that day, which is incredible timing and leads Diane to inform Peter about the fact that Chelsea Redfield was abducted. The big thing, though, in the dossier is the connection between Gordon Wick, the CEO of Turnlake, and the vice president, and how they clearly know each other, are friendly, and might be in bed with each other. Diane looks at Peter and says, "You know what you're saying, right?" And he says, "I do. But I'm not even worried about what they've done. I'm worried about what they will do. Because everything on the drive indicates there will be another attack." This is just a ton for Diane to take in. But she collects herself and says, "Okay, we need to prep the president on this. We need to talk to her, and you need to be there for it." Peter then says to Diane that he'll have his buddy bring in Rose. It needs to be discreet. And Diane nods and says, "Yeah, we'll bring her in through the FDR tunnel. Have your state trooper friend drop her off at the docks." And that is where Diane screws up. She doesn't even know she did it. Because Peter never told Diane that it was Francisco who was watching Rose. He just said that a friend was watching Rose. And when Diane says that and messes up, Peter now knows that Diane has been playing him this entire time, and she's in on it. So once Diane leaves the room, Peter angrily calls Rose and says, "Yeah, Diane's been playing us. She's in on it. She knows you're with Francisco. You guys got to get the hell out of there. Leave now. Meet me at the pier." And as he's calling Rose, Diane is calling Gordon Wick, telling him, "Peter's on to you." He's been able to connect the dots. He knows about everything, including the vice president. Now, while Diane is freaking out a little bit, Gordon Wick stays calm and says, "What do you want to do?" And Diane thinks for a bit and tells him, "I'll have Peter arrested. We'll isolate him until we can figure out the best way to silo him off. As for Rose, have your assassins kill her." Once she hangs up the phone, she grabs a couple of Secret Service agents and goes back to her office, but Peter's gone. So they put the APB out to be on the lookout for Peter, but they don't catch him. Peter, using some quick thinking and some creative hiding skills, is able to sneak out of the White House undetected where he heads to the pier. As for Rose and Francisco, they head to the pier, but Francisco realizes very quickly that they're being followed by a quite aggressive driver. Because of this, he knows that they must have put a tracker on the car. So they stop off very quickly and he lets Rose out so she can run off to the pier. And hopefully, he'll lead these people away from her. It doesn't work, however. The assassins see that they stopped off, and the male assassin heads off to go find Rose. The female assassin, using the tracker, is able to T-bone Francisco's car, where she walks up and shoots him at point-blank range. Not too long after that, the male assassin catches up to Rose near the water, and he starts attacking her. But Peter shows up in the nick of time where both of them are able to neutralize this guy and ultimately kill him. Even though that's not what Peter wanted to do, the guy kind of forced his hand. Peter and Rose get out of there. A short time later, the female assassin sees a dead body floating in the water, and she's beside herself because it's her boyfriend. The guy that she was planning on having a future with is dead, and she's not happy about it. But before he died, that guy did take a chunk of Peter with him. Using a knife, he was able to cut Peter up pretty good, so Rose and Peter need a place to lay low, and they head to a houseboat that is owned by one of Peter's dad's friends. As Rose is patching up Pete, Diane Farr was busy ripping into the vice president. She hands him the dossier and tells him that Peter and Rose are onto him and Wick. The bigger issue is they don't have the drive and Peter escaped, but they're going to be able to use Maddie's disappearance to their advantage to cover everything up. They're going to go and have a press conference where they tell the world that it was Peter Sutherland who was the one that kidnapped Maddie Redfield. Peter, who's already in a pretty bad mood because news of Francisco's death has gotten out, gets in an even worse mood when they hear the vice president address the nation saying that Peter was the one who kidnapped his daughter, because it's the farthest thing from the truth. And now he has a giant target on his back. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or two.